Hello and welcome to Restoring Our American Republic. I'm Chuck Benoit with The Nature of Things, where we are realigning God, government, and natural law so that we might restore our American Republic. In my founder's Bible, I came across a quote from John Adams. It was his opinion of democracies, and what struck me was his thoughts on the morals of citizens of a democracy. He felt that society would turn into anarchy. And of course, we see that in many Democrat strongholds. Even entire Democrat run states are anti police and unwilling to govern themselves with legitimate federal laws. Yes, anarchy. But he also notes that nothing would be secure, not your reputation or your property, and certainly not your inalienable rights. So that is clearly seen again in Democrat run communities where freedom of religion, freedom of speech, or your right to bear arms are routinely attacked. But also, freedom would have a very different manifestation. He believed that rather than having the freedom to do what is good and right, it would be expressed in wanton pleasure and capriciousness. Again, looks like Democrat behavior to me. But finally, he noted that cruelty would be a clear result of democracy. Cruelty, like killing unborn babies or mutilating emotionally fragile young boys and girls. Yes, we are clearly living in a more of a democracy than a republic, and we can blame whoever we will. We can't have a republic, though, unless we can find representatives who are willing to govern our communities, first of all, for the benefits of we the people, but also with natural laws as our guiding principles of governments. So, other than President Donald J. Trump, where are the Republicans? Good morning, Mike Levine, and I was just wondering if you've stumbled upon any Republicans lately.
They're on the endangered species list, Chuck.
Yeah, right.
Right, and
Definitely
the
endangered. No, I don't.
I
I
hate
just
to
don't
say it.
believe that too many legislators, even those of us, those who call themselves Republicans, even know what it means to govern as a Republican. But that's a
I'm saying to you, Chuck, that the whole thing here, the whole mindset here is, when we look at candidates running for office, whether it's on the legislative side or the executive side, we say, who is the smartest? Who has made the most money over their lifetime? Who exemplifies our dream life the most? But the fact is, Chuck, that intent is more important than any of those things. If we put a particular candidate in power, what will they do? And I'm saying to you that the richest guy is not necessarily the best representative. The person that has the most kids is not necessarily the best representative. We want the person like Chuck Benoit who respects the Constitution of the United States, cares about all of the citizens in the state of Florida or nationally, if you prefer to talk about the national level. But we have to look at, and we have to look at quality of life for the citizens of the state of Florida has to be our number one priority when we legislate and when we govern, Chuck. Has nothing to do with the candidate amount of money they have, how, which Ivy League university they went to. None of that translates into performance for the citizens of the state of Florida, Chuck.
Yeah, and it also begins at at the top, where the state Republican Party and what they're trying to do to give us excellence in leadership. There's just so many different things happening right now in Florida politics that are doing everything they can to keep people from being able to launch a campaign. And so what we end up with is party choices. We've talked about selection versus election, and we're just seeing that being played out on a regular basis. And there's a big question. Are we? Is the RPOF prepared with Republican legislators for our November election? Are we
That's
prepared?
true, Chuck. But I also want to make one more point to you that um, most people don't really connect the dots because the Republican Party or all political parties, the the head of the party is not the chairman of the party or our representative to the Republican National Committee, the committee man and committee woman to the RNC. No, the highest ranking elected official from a particular political party is the head of the party for, in our case, we're talking about the state today. So Ron DeSantis is the head of the Republican Party of Florida. And if you don't like what's going on at the Republican Party of Florida, you can blame Evan Power all day long. But he gets his marching orders from Ron DeSantis and then from the majority leaders in the House and Senate to a lesser degree. And keep in mind, the legislature passes laws for sure, but the executive branch enforces the law. So that's a very critical thing. You can blame Evan Power, who has a lot to be criticized for, but Ron DeSantis owns it. He can walk into Evan Powers or call Evan Power on the phone and change the direction of this whole thing anytime he wants. It'll take about 2 minutes to explain that the governor doesn't is not on board with the direction of the party. That's all he's got to say. Hey, Evan, you know what? I'm not on board with what you're doing. I got a couple of problems here. This, and this. I'd like to have those things changed this afternoon. Would that be okay? And Evan will say, yes, sir. That's the way it works.
Yeah, so obviously we have a governor's race here coming up very soon, so that's got to be an extremely important um, a race for us to be considering for that very fact alone, let alone the governor is an extremely important person. But what we're seeing here in the Republican Party is a little bit of inside politics where some grassroots people are not really being given an opportunity to get their voice out there. I'm not sure if it's the RPOF's uh, responsibility to do that, but I don't believe it's their right or responsibility to try to prevent it. Um,
Chuck, Chuck, let's talk about how do you evaluate the performance of the chairman of the Republican Party of Florida at the end of the day, right? Now you can hear it. Let me answer the question. If you want me to, I'll answer the question. But number one, you can hear Evan Power and the RPOF talking about voter registrations, right? That's their measuring stick. That's legit, even though they have very little to do with it. But if you're growing, and this is classic over not just Evan Power's term, but all Republicans, even locally here, we've had our local chairman and state committee man, state committee woman come out in front of the body, which they never go to the press, which is crazy. They should be doing press releases on a regular basis, in my opinion. But especially when they have good things to talk about, like increasing voter registrations, right? So that's something they say, hey, we were up, 750,000 voter registrations last month, and this month we're up 1 million. We put another, 250, which I'm just pulling random numbers, so it means nothing. But if your voter registrations for your party are increasing, that means that your leadership is doing a good job, right? That's the whole thing with politics, right? That people take credit for things that they have nothing to do with. Because I would suggest that the Republican Party of Florida has literally nothing to do with the increase in Republican voter registrations over Democrats in the last 17 months. I say they have absolutely nothing to do with it. Now, you can make a case that Ron DeSantis, our Republican governor, has a lot to do with it because the way he handled COVID is bringing a lot of conservatives into the state of Florida. So, they're coming to the state of Florida because Ron DeSantis did a good job managing the COVID pandemic. So that means that people who agree with his platform on COVID are moving to the state and they're registering Republican. So that is a component of why Republican voter registrations are increasing. But the real reason is because of Donald Trump. And Donald Trump endorsed Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis would not be the governor today if Donald Trump did not endorse him. And if you go to Trump rallies across the state of Florida back in the 2022 to 2024 time period, you'll see massive turnouts for Donald Trump with maybe Ron DeSantis, Marco Rubio, Blazing Goldlia, people like that in tow because they're riding on Donald Trump's coattails, Chuck. So that's the point right there. You know, how do you evaluate the performance of the chairman of the Republican Party of Florida? And ultimately, Chuck, um, Evan Powers is going to get his report card on election day in November. That's when Evan Powers is going to get his report card.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I feel like going a gazillion different ways here. Primarily because, again, as I noted in my little monologue thing, that Donald Trump is a Republican. Now, when I say that, most Republican politicians hate him, and they hate him because he's governing like a Republican, not like an autocrat or like a globalist. And there's plenty of globalists in the Republican Party, but Donald Trump isn't one of them. But let's try to take it a little closer to home. We're talking about elections, and we're talking about local elections. Where are we here in our local election? Are we prepared for November here in Lake County? Maybe let's start with this question: does the grassroots make any difference at all, Mike, do you feel, in an election?
The grassroots can make a big difference in elections. But if they're not phone banking and knocking on doors, then they will have absolutely no impact. Okay. Because we go to the same meetings with the same 30 people and we talk to an echo chamber. So I'm telling you, and I'm just saying to you that you are not going to see any significant, first of all, they're not going to, grassroots activists, REC members, Republican Executive Committee members, will not be knocking on doors between the August primary and the November election in Lake County, Florida, and I would suggest in most counties around the state of Florida. Why, Chuck? And I'm going to say to you that because of the way that leadership has managed the Republican Party of Florida, there is little to no enthusiasm for Republican candidates going into the general election, Chuck.
We've seen over this last not quite 2 years a genuine attack on some of the most fervent Republican grassroots people, total takeovers of different RECs, continually pushing down on the local REC members and forcing them into silence or even throwing them out of the party. None of that really helps with local efforts. And I know there's an effort by the RPOF to give local RECs a little $250 check if they get out there and check a few boxes on behavior. But the real essence, the real people who are out there, who were out there, have been out there knocking on doors, they're being silenced. And there's all of a sudden this elitist, at least in our community, a bunch of elitists that have taken over the REC, and I don't see them doing anything.
To be honest with you, Chuck, um, it's unusual for a Republican executive committee to actually mobilize voters at the precinct level um, based on the REC. That is, again, as I pointed out many times, people don't join the Republican Executive Committee because they want to make phone calls and knock on doors for Republican candidates. People join the Republican Executive Committee for two reasons. Number one, they want to be informed about what's going on, and they believe that the Republican Party in the local counties they're closer to the elected officials, so they know more about what's going on than most people do. So they come here to get information. And the second reason, as we're experiencing here in Lake County, is because there are internal struggles, wars going on between the Republican Party in Lake County. So the elected officials recruit a whole bunch of people to control the Republican Party in the county. And those people come there just to vote in support of their favorite elected official. And that's what we're seeing, of course, here in Lake County, and I think in many other counties across the state. And I don't want to say all, because there are some RECs out there that are doing a really good job. And the measurement stick is, are you knocking on doors? If you're turning out canvassers to knock on doors in any real numbers, then you're a celebrity. I mean, you're the guy. You're the person that is actually doing what needs to be done. You're turning out Republican door knockers to make a direct contact with voters. That's what we should be doing. And but it's very unusual across the state that that actually happens, Chuck, because the party doesn't value. And I'm not talking just the Republican Party. The Democrats are just as bad, maybe worse. And we have to talk about that subject a little deeper, because they do have a better strategy than we do as Republicans. But so it's really I'm saying to you, Chuck, all of this boils down to leadership. And then you've got to say, what is the actual intent of leadership? And the intent of leadership is not to improve the quality of life for the citizens of the state of Florida or the United States for that matter. The intent of political leadership is to solidify their personal position in the pecking order of political hierarchy. That is the objective. So they're leaving people behind. And particularly, I'm going to just say it because it's true, under Evan Power, he has alienated more Republicans than he has attracted to the party, Chuck.
Yeah, so here's a good, interesting question, Mike. Is our we have a super majority in the House, and I believe in the Senate, and I believe also in the House. And so,
True.
do we really care? Does the RPF really care whether or not we turn out the vote? I mean, what if they lose a seat or two? What's the big deal? What are your thoughts there?
Well, the legislature, with a super majority, I'm going to venture to say, in both the House and the Senate, literally does as much deal making with Democrats as they do with Republicans, because the Republicans have such a strong majority in both chambers. They're the Democrats just know that they can't get anything done. So the Republicans say, hey, you know what? We know that you're wounded, injured, irrelevant. So here's what we're going to do for you. You do what we ask you to do, and we'll actually let you get a couple of your priorities onto the floor. And then Democrats are actually working for Republicans. That's what's going on in the legislature today. And I could give you some examples of that if you wanted. But so the problem becomes, but here's the problem. The Republican Party of Florida is waking up to it right now. 7 months from election day, they realize that if they lose seats in the House or the Senate here in Florida, and double important, well, and then you got to look at the midterms for the congressional seats too, which is massive for the direction of, wait for it, the world, not just the USA, not just the state of Florida. But if Republicans lose seats in the House and Senate in the midterms, the direction of this entire world is going to go a very different way, a dramatically stark and immediate reversal of everything that, I'm going to just say, Donald Trump has accomplished will be reversed instantly and dramatically. So that's where we are. And as I referred to the report card earlier, in Florida, Evan Powers' report card is going to come in based on whether he picks up seats in the legislature. And of course, we keep the cabinet. And keep in mind, I'm saying to you right now, Chuck, that based on what's going on in Florida's gubernatorial election, we have no guarantee we'll win the damn governorship, Chuck. We don't know that for sure. We don't know because there is no enthusiasm for any of these candidates, Chuck. You get a little band of people supporting one or a little band of people supporting the other. But obviously, Byron Donalds is just so far ahead of the pack with the Trump endorsement and his fundraising that he is the presumed nominee right now. But there's a lot of people around the state of Florida who are not enthusiastic about a Byron Donalds governorship. So the question then becomes, Chuck, here's a big deal that everybody needs to really focus on because at the end of the day, these elections are won by turnout. And I'm saying to you that the rank and file voter, if they're not enthusiastic about their candidates, they're not going to turn out, Chuck. And if Republicans don't turn out in November, we could easily lose the governor's mansion, Chuck.
Well, I agree with you there, and it's clear that the Democrats are definitely more enthusiastic about getting out the vote. Um, and again, I feel like President Trump is not the Republican Party's favorite son because he's doing so much that could have been done decades ago should any other Republican president ever choose to govern like a Republican for the people instead of for the political special interest groups, etc. But here we are, 7 months away from an election. Where does enthusiasm? Where how what is going to increase the enthusiasm of the Republican if it isn't simply the idea that we're going to lose everything if we don't get out and vote?
Chuck, that matters to you and me and political insiders, but the average rank and file voter doesn't care about it. Election day is just a responsibility that most voters have, and they want to go to the polls and they want to vote. But as you know, they're going to make up their mind 15 days before election day. They're not going to pay attention to anything. Text messages, emails, even mail and postcards in their mailboxes, which of course won't begin for a while here. Again, we're here button up against the primary, and I've got received no political mail really from anybody going into the primary. So the rank and file voter doesn't really care. Okay, they vote because they, as an obligation, right? They're not, studying the candidates like you and I do and going through all that. The so I'm saying to you that voter turnout is crucial. And what I really want to say on this subject is that if the leadership on the Democrat side um, has any legitimacy, if I was the chairman of the Democrat Party of Florida, I would be certainly looking in every single Florida House district and every Senate district is going to be on the ballot in 2026. And I'd be looking for weaknesses. And keep in mind, Chuck, we just went through this in Lake County with the city council race in Claremont, where our previous chairman, Anthony Sabatini, organized a yeoman's effort and got Todd Howard elected to the city council. And then when Anthony Sabatini's term as chairman expired, keep in mind that was a special election where Todd Howard got elected, very low number of votes cast. And then his term expired, so he had to go back on the ballot. And Todd Howard lost to a Democrat because we just did not, the Todd Howard campaign didn't do its job. And the Republican Executive Committee did not do anything really until the very last minute to attempt to keep that Republican on that city council seat. And he was replaced with a Democrat. So I see that as a very significant threat to Republican seats around the state, but particularly in South Lake County. So I think that our Republican candidate for the Florida House in South Lake County has a lot of weaknesses that have been highly publicized in the media. And if the Democrats don't come after that and don't exploit that weakness to pick up that seat, especially Chuck, you live in that district, so you know that those are actually blue precincts down there, Chuck. You could take a look at it, and I have looked at it. And I'm saying to you that there are precincts in House District 25 that are blue. And when you have House districts in Lake County, the very red county, that are blue in District 25, and you have a very vulnerable candidate there, that is an easy pickup for the Democrats. So I'm cautioning the Republican Party of Florida, because if they want to keep Florida House seat 25 red, they're going to have to do a lot of work. And that means boots on the ground, Chuck.
Yeah, when I hear numbers like Lee County is 25% more Republicans than Democrats, and then I look at my local community, and it looks a lot closer to 50-50. I mean, I think we still have a majority in numerically, but it's pretty close to 50-50 down here. So we definitely
Well,
have.
I'm going to give you a homework assignment, Chuck. I'm going to give you a homework assignment. In House District 25, just get a list of the precincts and go precinct by precinct and show which precincts are blue and which precincts are red, and then total them up and give us the uh, Republican versus Democrat. And of course, you might as well throw in the other party affiliations too while you're doing the work, and just tell us, in House District 25, what is the ratio between Democrats and Republicans? And I'm going to tell you that House District 25 is a very vulnerable seat, Chuck.
Yeah, well, it's could very well be. So I guess in our last few minutes here, what should we be doing to prepare for November? I mean, who should we be looking to? Should we be looking to the RPOF, the local Lake REC, our committee people, precinct committee people? Who's supposed to be carrying the water here?
That's a great question, because the Republican Party of Florida has taken the position over the last, since under Evan Power, that the RECs, local RECs, really aren't important. So the only way to make a significant difference in the outcome of the November election, Chuck, is to literally mobilize boots on the ground in every county in Florida for your team. That's the only way to make a difference, right? Because you're going to get, the party is loaded with cash. So you're going to get, for the governor, you're going to get television advertising. You're going to get direct mail in your, postcards and mailboxes. You're going to get that. But you're not going to get enthusiasm, okay? Because TV ads and postcards and mailboxes don't create enthusiasm. So the only way to do it, if I was the chairman of the Republican Party of Florida today, and I was in the situation I'm in right now, I would literally be on the phone talking to every single chairman in the state of Florida and emphasizing how critical it is for them to get walk groups in the neighborhood. And I'd be offering them assistance to get that done, whatever that takes. Okay. And, this is something, again, our political class really just takes their fame and fortune for granted. They think they can just continue to do what they've always done, and they're going to continue to get the results that they've gotten recently, really since Donald Trump, Chuck. Because I'm telling you that before Donald Trump, the Republican Party of Florida was a loser, and we're heading back in that direction today. So, and believe me, what I just said to you is what the Republican Party of Florida should be doing is not going to happen. This is not in their universe. These guys do not get the power of personal one-on-one leadership. They don't get it. So this is not going to happen. But if you wanted to save it, that's what you would do. You would go to every single chairman, have one-on-one FaceTime with every single chairman, and discuss what is their personal situation, what is their county REC's profile, what are their strengths and weaknesses at the county level. And then you're going to start putting together walk groups, whatever that looks like. If you got to pay walkers to go door to door with Republican collateral material, then that's what you have to do. But I'm telling you right now, if we don't do that, and we won't, then we are in for some pretty unanticipated wake-up call in November, Chuck.
Well, let's finish this off. I'm going to give you your final comment here, and maybe you might want to answer this question: is the Republican Party of Florida better off today than they were 2 years ago. Let me have it, Mike.
Yeah, well, Chuck, I know, I remember what a big scandal it was when we removed Christian Ziegler from the chairmanship of the Republican Party of Florida and put Evan Power in charge. I remember that scandal. I was blown away by it. I was shocked that we were having that conversation about a Republican Party of Florida chairman when we removed Christian Ziegler from the chairmanship. But I will tell you something else, Chuck. The leadership that I just referenced, Christian Ziegler did. Christian Ziegler got in his car and drove to all 67 RECs in the state of Florida. To this day, even after his removal, he's got a very strong relationship with all the REC chairmen, and but not all, but most of the REC chairmen around the state committeemen, the state committeewomen, our RNC people, all of the campaign consultants. Christian's plugged into all that. Now, of course, Evan Power is a consultant. He's a lobbyist, right? So I'm not trying to minimize the significance of what transpired when Christian Ziegler was removed from office. I'm not trying to minimize that. There were some serious problems there. But from a leadership standpoint, Christian Ziegler is a leader. Christian Ziegler communicates directly with his constituents and mobilizes them. He listens to them. He gives them what they need. They know that he has their back and he cares about them. And we haven't had that since Christian's been gone, Chuck.
Well, thank you very much, Mike Levine, and thank you all for tuning into our twice weekly live stream. Please follow us on Facebook at Restoring Our American Republic. Check us out on YouTube at Restoring Our American Republic -RORR. Please like and share the program. And then remember, if you're unwilling to govern yourself, you will be governed by tyrants. Until next time, God bless you. God bless President Donald J. Trump. And God bless America.